Hello, everyone. BM. It's time to talk a little bit about Berachain and more specifically about, I guess, proof of liquidity and how these rewards in Berachain work. Because although everybody seems to understand what's going on, it's definitely still quite difficult to see where exactly all the rewards are going to and how the system will work on mainnet so that you can start thinking about how to optimize your LP rewards, optimize your BGT stake, and so forth. So I'm here just quickly going to show you first what you probably already know if you've used the testnet. It's Berachain is a sort of Tendermint like network. It has delegated proof of stake consensus, which means you can stake their token BGT to validators. And the BGT delegated to all of these validators is done within BGT Station, which is where these two screenshots are from. On the left, you see BGT are like infrared, which is a liquid staking derivative as a validator, Kodiak Finance, also an application within Berachain, and then some other people like Whispernode, StakeLab, they're more Cosmos oriented validators. And all of these validators, you can stake your BGT with them. They charge a commission on the BGT they get, and then they provide you an API. And this API is coming from where they choose to direct their incentives, because the API doesn't come to you in BGT. You get rewarded in BGT. You get rewarded in incentives, and that's here displayed on the right column. And these incentives are given by apps and by other people to specific vaults, which these validators delegate their BGT incentives to. So the validators choose where their incentives goes, and based on that, your APR is different. So currently, even if you stake with infrared, you don't necessarily get an APR here. You probably get it on the liquid staking derivative or somewhere in their app, but right now they're not providing you with any APR whatsoever. So currently, the highest APR is actually with Whispernode. But that's super hard to measure. Like, what is BGT worth? How do you measure the API? Like, how much is this token actually worth when you sell it? That's all quite complicated. But we hope that on mainnet this will look in a similar way. And then on the other hand, so what do the validators see? Well, the validators, they see sort of this interface. They see, okay, hey, these are the LP vaults that people can send incentives to. What am I going to choose depending on how much incentives are provided, how much BGT is already sent towards the validator, the BGT capture, and how many other people are sending incentives here, basically. So we as a validator can decide which pools our BGT goes to, and in return optimize the yield for our stakers. And then there is also the LP, people who deposit LPs into these pools to earn the incentives we give to them. And this interface looks nice, but it's still quite complicated if you look at it like this, like where does all the money go? So on the documentation, you can find a little bit more deeper information about like how this actually orchestrates. So you might have seen this graph on the documentation where there's all the different people that are operating within the system. So you have people that stake Bera, which is required to become an active validator. And then validators propose blocks and they get BGT in return. And this BGT they can then distribute, which is point 4 here. They can distribute it to the reward vaults, which is where LP providers stake their tokens with. And then whenever these reward vaults, this BGT goes to the providers, and now the question is, okay, what actually goes to the BGT stakers, which is delegated. It's shown here in point 9, but it's not super clear. So another item in the doc shows, okay, what actually the staking users get is, again, not really shown. It's the user gets BGT for delegating an asset, but what do the people get that stake with the validator? Well, that's what we're diving into. I made this graph, which shows you roughly what the system should look like if we assume that validators optimize the staker yield, the yield for their BGT stakers. And in the different colors are the different types of tokens and the different types of emissions and incentives that are going on in the system. So all the players here, we have the Berachain consensus, which is just the Tendermint proof of stake. We have the validators. We have the reward vaults, which are you can stake your LP tokens with. You have the critical owned liquidity stakers, so the people that LP in pools and want to earn BGT. You have the apps that provide either these LP pools or want to do bribes and send incentives to reward vaults. And then you have the BGT and Bera stakers. So in the mechanism above, you never really saw what happened to the stakers. So that's what we're diving into here. The stakers actually only get two things. They don't get BGT. The BGT goes to the validator. It then goes to the reward vaults, and the validator just takes a commission. What the stakers get is the bribery emissions from the reward vaults. So if I'm an app and I want people to, I want validators to send BGT towards my token, my BEX pool with my token in there, then I might deposit bribes in USD or in my token. And in return, I get the BGT and my bribes go to the validator. So the validator ends up deciding whether this gets passed through to their stakers or they keep it all to themselves as a 100% commission. So the validator can set different commissions for the BGT, different commission for the protocol fees, and different commission for the rewards. So they really control a lot about like what you get as a staker. So for the validator case in this sense, what's likely happening is the validator will say, okay, I will delegate my BGT emissions to whatever reward vaults give my stakers the highest return. I'll optimize, I'll spread it around these vaults so that I can maybe get, I don't know, 10 or 20% to my stakers. So all of the bribery emissions, they then pass through their stakers so that all the people who have BGT stake with this validator get a nice APR on top of their BGT. Instead of them having to convert it to Bera and not stake at all, they try to optimize their rewards so that as many people stake with this validator specific and their commission goes up. And in this system, you can sort of see that if there is 100 validators that do this, like let's say there's 100 validators that optimize their commissions, and there is 15 reward vaults, then it will end up happening that all of the reward vaults will have exactly the same APR because everybody is optimizing for exactly the same system, namely the highest bribery emissions that go to their stakers. So then at a certain point, the only thing that's happening is that every validator has roughly the same APR, every staker has roughly the same APR. So there's no dispersion anymore. So even though there's a system where in theory people have to pick and choose, choosing sort of is completely eliminated because everybody wants to optimize for their staker APR. And in this case, I guess stakers are well off to have a nice APR. Everybody roughly gets the same thing, and they also get protocol fees. But I don't think this is the likely end state because, like I said before, validators have a lot of power. So what are they going to do with the power? What can they focus on to either increase their own yield or their yield for stakers? So maybe it makes sense to quickly dive into like a different scenario that could play out on mainnet. And that is, what if validators take off-chain bribes? So instead of sending their BGT to whatever is most optimal on the reward vaults and giving their stakers the highest APR, they just agree with an application directly. They just say, hey, I like what you're doing. Maybe you can give me some advisory tokens and I'll just send all of my BGT emissions to you. Then I don't have to optimize. I don't have to track anything. I just hope that you give me a high enough reward that it will be worth it. And now suddenly all of the rewards go to the validator, right? Like as you see, the BGT stakers only get protocol fees. And protocol fees is, I don't know, hopefully it's super high, but it's likely never going to be much above like 1 to 5%. Like even on Ethereum and Solana, it's just 2 or 3%. So now suddenly the stakers earn very little and the validator earns a lot. And over time, of course, stakers will probably leave this validator because they don't really get any good APR. But in general, stakers are not that active. You might consider them as relatively passive participants and that's what we know from delegated proof of stake, at least in the past. So these validators might be able to have high voting power for a very long time by giving away their incentives or maybe sharing some of these advisory shares with their stakers directly. So in that case, it sort of changes the system because now it's not optimal anymore. Now there might be slight dispersion because some validators are not participating at all, or they're participating more in favor of specific protocols. Like for example, infrared might only send towards what their token holders vote for, and Kodiak might only use their validator to send towards their own pools. So there will generally be some dispersion, but the question is how high will it be, and what will happen to all these stakers that sort of get fucked by their validators in some regards. They don't really get the total incentives that they're owed for having such a BGT stake. And I guess that's where maybe the third option comes in, is like, how can we pull these bribes on chain to solve the dispersion that's caused by these direct bribes and not necessarily retain the like no dispersion at all if everybody optimizes. And I won't name names yet because this is going public in a few weeks, and then people can try it out on testnet. But we're building a product that is optimizing this reward structure and allowing more active participation by both stakers and applications in the entire system. And what we do is we keep the original idea where most validators are going to optimize for giving the best BGT emissions to the best vaults and thereby giving their stakers the best return. But they might get a lot of messages by all kinds of apps that want to bribe them directly. And I know this is happening because we've got these messages, and I know other people that have got these messages. So what will mainly happen is these validators will want to price their BGT accordingly. They will not want to say, okay, hey, here, just give it to me. I'll give you some advisory shares. No, they will say, okay, I don't know what my BGT is worth right now, but it might be worth X, Y, and Z per single BGT incentive spent to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a market for myself. And that's what our app is doing. It's creating a market to directly bribe every single validator on Berachain as long as they opt in for the application to set their cunning board. So now apps can go to the app and immediately send incentives there. View it as, I give you $100 and then you will, however much incentives are sent towards you, maybe it's 1,000, that means I get 10% of your total BGT emissions. So every so often, every few days, when this auction closes, the cutting board is set by the validator, and that means that and the cutting board is the item that determines what kind of incentives go to which reward vaults. So now suddenly the stakers are profiting from not just the reward vaults emissions, which likely have very little dispersion, meaning all of these reward vaults have roughly the same API, so your API probably is not really changing on the bribery emissions part, but you're getting extra emissions for people that are sort of nudging you towards voting for a specific vault. And these are the direct bribes, which are instantly claimable by all BGT stakers that opt in to receive them. So now stakers actually get all revenue sources. They don't just get the briberies, they don't just get the protocol fees, but they also get sort of a commission on the total BGT by the validator. Because the more BGT the validator has, the more people are willing to bribe specifically that validator to send extra emissions to their vaults or like nudge them slightly in the right direction. And this also puts a price on BGT. From now on, everybody can look at our app and say, hey, I see that currently the price of one BGT is going for $10, or the other way around. 10 BGT is going to incentives is going for $1. And people can price this and use this to their advantage. All tokens will be accepted to do bribes with, so you can bribe with your favorite meme coin. You can bribe with anything that's accessible in the ecosystem, unlike the reward vaults. And you can bribe from anything from a single dollar to full-on millions if you want to. So there is no cap. There's no whitelisting as for which no governance caps as for which tokens are possible, as you can use it to send to every single reward vault. So hopefully we create a system where BGT stakers are not only getting the bribery emissions and participating in protocol and liquidity, but are also participating more directly by getting bribes from protocols and apps directly through the validator themselves. Hopefully making validators more active to actually participate in the ecosystem, get people to bribe their incentives, and really kick off the flywheel that is the Berachain Proof-of-liquidity system, instead of making it a singular system where validators hold all the power and have no real interaction with their community. So we will be using this. It will go live on testnet in a few weeks. I will put all the details in the description for you if you want to learn a little bit more about the application, because whenever you see this, it's probably live. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you understand a little bit better what BGT rewards are doing on Berachain and how you as a staker can optimize your yields by going with validators that actively participate in the ecosystem. Have a good one, and on to the next video.